Hello, welcome. I am Abigail. Today I'm going to be talking about the breastfeeding myths and kind of addressing the reasons why mums choose not to breastfeed. This isn't a video to tell you that you absolutely should breastfeed and that if you formula feed that you're wrong. It's just a video to kind of address the generational lies that actually prevent mothers from actually choosing to breastfeed. I actually don't care how you feed your child. A lot of people like to assume that because I'm so pro breastfeeding, I am anti-formula, and actually that's not true. I don't actually care how you feed your baby. What does annoy me though, and that the issue that I do have, is when the value of breast milk and the idea that breast milk isn't superior to formula milk when it actually is. I feel like a lot of people feel like they cannot be pro breastfeeding because they don't want to offend formula feeding mums. What annoys me is when people don't acknowledge that breast milk is actually superior to formula milk. Regardless of if you don't want to think like that, and regardless if you want to argue that your child is healthy and happy and they are formula fed, and they probably are, that's fine, but that doesn't take away from the fact that breast milk still is superior to formula milk. Another thing that really annoys me, when mothers try to reason why they're not breastfeeding, like I said, you don't even need to explain. I don't think you should have to explain the reason why you're not breastfeeding your child. If you want to formula feed, that's fine. But when they feel like they have to reason why they're not breastfeeding their child, and then they say these myths and these lies that I'm just about to address, a lot of the time it's actually not the mother's fault. They actually do believe these things. It's a kind of a generational thing, things that have been told to them to prevent them from even wanting to breastfeed, particularly if they were considering breastfeeding in the first place and then somebody or multiple people have told them these things and it's put them off breastfeeding, and actually all these things are a lie anyway. So I just wanted to clear that up. So myth number one, and it's probably the most common one that I hear quite regularly, and that is that formula fed babies will sleep longer than breastfed babies. And of course, when you're a mother, particularly new mothers, of course we would love our babies to sleep. And it's kind of a well-known fact that babies don't sleep. So the idea that if you formula feed your baby, you'll get more sleep sounds quite inviting. I'm not actually surprised that this is probably the most common one that I hear. I've actually done a video quite a while ago about baby sleep and the reasons why babies don't sleep, so I'm going to link that below because I'm not going to be talking about the ins and outs of baby sleep now, but yeah, I'll link that below. I did a video about why I won't ever sleep train my baby or any future children, but yeah, so breastfed babies don't sleep as much as formula fed babies, and that's actually not true. If you ignore any sleep training that might have happened, or ignore a formula fed baby that might have been overfed, because if you didn't know, formula fed babies and breastfed babies who are fed breast milk through a bottle are supposed to be pace fed, and that's to prevent overfeeding them. So if we take into account that these formula fed babies are not being overfed, and none of the babies are being sleep trained, and you had a breastfed baby next to a formula fed baby, a study has actually shown, and research suggests, that breastfed babies and mothers of breastfed babies actually get more sleep than mothers of formula fed babies. And when you think about it, I can actually see why. So in line with the Safe Sleep 7, if you want to co-sleep or bed share, one of the safe sleeping recommendations, and it is a recommendation, is that you breastfeed. So if you take that into account, breastfed mums who breastfeed can actually sleep next to their baby and feed them at the same time. Whereas if you are formula feeding, and your baby is hungry, you have to get up, make a bottle, get back into bed, sit up with your baby, feed them the bottle, then wind them, you know, the process, then put them back to sleep. Whereas if you are just breastfeeding, you can literally breastfeed lying down in side lying position and go back to sleep. I'll link that study down below as well if you want to do a little bit of research on that. But yeah, that is the first myth, so that breastfed babies don't sleep as much as formula-fed babies, and that is actually not true. The second one is quite a personal thing to the mother, I think, and that is breastfeeding in public. So for some people, the idea of breastfeeding in public can be really daunting, obviously because you have to reveal your breast. There are ways and like little tricks and hacks to not, you know, to be as modest as possible if that's what you want. And you may think that you'll get a lot of comments about, you know, breastfeeding your child in public, and often we hear, you know, on social media and things, is negative things about breastfeeding in public and negative comments that come from people. And actually, obviously I can only speak for myself, but I have been breastfeeding for 15 months, and I have never ever had a negative experience breastfeeding in public. And actually a lot of people that I've spoken to who I know who breastfeed haven't either, and if they have, it's just like one odd comment in their, you know, 2-year breastfeeding journey. It's not something that happens regularly. A lot of people might think it, they might look at you in a certain way, or I don't know, turn around when you're breastfeeding, but often people actually don't have the bollocks to come up to you and ask you to put your boob away when you're feeding your baby. It's obviously quite a personal decision. I actually do not cover up at all, ever, and that's just because I don't feel like I need to. I wouldn't feel more comfortable if I was covered up, and I actually found it really tricky in the newborn days when Everly was a newborn to try and latch her onto my breast while I had a big muslin cover all over me, and just found it completely unnecessary. But I know there's mothers out there that would much prefer to cover up, and that's fine, that's their own personal preference. A little trick I do have is the 2-layer top hack, and that is to wear a layer on top of, so you'd wear your normal layer on top. So for example, I have got a roll neck jumper, and underneath this I could wear a vest top, so that I pull this layer up and pull my vest top down, and you're literally, nobody can actually see anything then. If you've latched your baby onto your breast, normally that your top layer kind of sits on their face anyway, so a lot of the time people don't even think or don't even see that you are breastfeeding. People don't even notice, but that's a really, really good hack. If you don't want to be faffing about with an extra layer, you can just wear a vest top underneath your normal like top or jumper, and that's really good with less faffing, but you might feel more modest and a bit more covered up. So the next one is if mum is on any medication that they have been told by a doctor that they can't breastfeed on. And this one I have to be very careful about, because obviously there is medications out there, you know, for conditions, health conditions, mental illnesses, etc., that you absolutely cannot breastfeed on. However, you do have to take into account, and I actually experienced this firsthand while Everly was a newborn, but you have to take into account that doctors and GPs, even a lot of midwives, are not actually breastfeeding specifically trained. So they can advise you that not to take a medication while you're breastfeeding, and a lot of the time, in fact the majority of the time, they are giving you that advice is because they don't actually know if you can breastfeed on it, and of course to save their own back, to cover themselves, they tell you not to breastfeed on it, on the medication, in case, you know, worst case scenario, and it affects the baby. However, my own personal experience, I experienced this firsthand. When Everly was a newborn, I had an infection and I was given a course of antibiotics to take, and the doctor informed me, you will not be able to breastfeed on these antibiotics. And me being me, breastfeeding, as you'll know, is an extreme passion of mine, and I wasn't going to let, one thing on my part prevent me from breastfeeding my child and to stop our breastfeeding journey way before we were both ready to. So I spoke to people who had breastfed, and they recommended that I spoke to the Breastfeeding Network. I will link their website down below and their Facebook page. If you have been told that you cannot breastfeed on a certain medication, please speak to the Breastfeeding Network. They are a community, highly trained in breastfeeding, and they have nurses, pharmacists who are all well trained on medication and well trained on breastfeeding. So before you think that you cannot breastfeed it on certain medication, please check with the Breastfeeding Network to make sure that the information that you have been told is correct. Because if you are considering breastfeeding, that is the reason that you think that you have to formula feed your child, that could be the complete game changer for you. And kind of on the same lines as that is smoking. So smoking cigarettes. A lot of people assume that you cannot breastfeed your child if you smoke, and actually it is still safer to breastfeed your child while you're smoking if you smoke cigarettes. The only thing that you absolutely cannot do, is bed share or co-sleep with your baby whilst smoking. But the benefits of the actual breast milk outweigh any negative effect that smoking may have on the baby, because breast milk is so superior. So it's safer to breastfeed your child than formula feed your child if you are a smoking mother. The next thing I kind of touched on a little bit at the start of the video, and that was that dad might find it hard to bond if he can't feed the baby. And the first thing that I want to say about this is, and it's simple as this, you do not have to feed your baby to bond with your baby. And that is such a common thing for parents of the mother-in-laws, older generations, to make that comment that your husband, your partner, your spouse, whatever, will not be able to bond with his own child if you are breastfeeding. And that is not true. So I'm going to give you an example of our situation. I've exclusively breastfed. Evie had a few express breast milk bottles when she was like really little, because I had mastitis and the breast milk was there, and we just wanted to try her with bottles whilst pace feeding her, which her dad tried to give her, and she just wasn't interested. It actually was quite traumatic for her, I think, so we cut it out straight away. But from the day Evely has been born, Ewan, Evely's dad, will bath with her every night. If he's here, sometimes he has to work away or he's doing something in the evenings, but the majority of the time, 9 times out of 10, if Ewan is here, he will bath Evely. And from a newborn baby to how old she is now, which is 15 months old, he has always bathed her. That is their time together, that is their time to bond. Skin on skin is incredible for bonding with your baby, and they've done that. That's that activity, that's that time of the day, every day, where I'm not even in the room, where in a situation where they really have to trust each other. They have that skin on skin bond, and it's in the evening, and it's really calm, quiet time, and it's designated bonding time for them. There's no distractions, there's no phones, there's it's like nice and dimly lit, and it's part of our bedtime routine. And their bond, because of that, she really trusts him. So regardless if I am still her comfort, and she has always been very much quite clingy to me, and likes to be comforted by me, but that doesn't necessarily mean that she hasn't got an incredible bond with her dad. And yeah, so that I can really highly recommend that dad does bath time if you are concerned about dad bonding with the baby. Another thing that I can suggest, that's baby massage. Research has shown that doing baby massage on a regular basis really makes a connection between baby and parent, for the parent to really get to know baby's cues and their personality. And so having that designated, non-distracting, quiet, calm, gentle, de-stimulating time with your baby is really good time to bond as well. So there are a few suggestions, but you do not have to feed your baby to bond with them. The last two actually kind of go hand in hand, and that is that you will never have the freedom back if you breastfeed your baby. So I'm not going to beat around the bush. Of course, breastfeeding is very demanding, because particularly if you only exclusively feed from the breast rather than given any express bottles of milk, it can be quite physically demanding. It is. And because breastfed babies tend to feed on demand, formula-fed babies should too, but it's more well known that breastfed babies do feed on demand. So it's kind of a bit harder to get that bit of leeway and a schedule if you need some alone time, some you time, some quiet time without your baby. And this one kind of goes down to the support that you have around you. So I'm referencing back to myself quite a lot, but that's kind of the example that I can give you personally. But I actually don't really, of course I need the quiet time and alone time and me time, but that doesn't necessarily mean I have to be away from my baby to get that. The first thing I can suggest is that you find something that is that freedom and that alone time and that me time and that time for yourself. Doesn't necessarily mean it will be the same time, the kind of thing in mind that you had pre-baby and pre-children. You know, regardless of how you feed your baby, you evolve, you completely change as a person when you are a mother. So that time designated to you probably won't be doing the same thing now that you are a mother, just because your life's completely different, you have different responsibilities. So if you are breastfeeding, for example, and your baby spends a lot of time with you because you are their source of food, find something, little things every day that will make you feel more like yourself again. So personally, the freedom that I need is going for a walk every day with Everly. When she was younger, it was when she was in the sling and she'd go to sleep, and that, knowing that she was asleep and that, you know, I could just breathe for a minute and just think about myself, and I was doing something, you know, I wasn't just stuck in the house, and I was doing something that was good for my mind, was really good for my mind, because I was outside and I'd gone for a walk, and that Everly was still there and I was there if she needed me, but I wasn't on edge constantly thinking if I was away from her, is she okay? Will she need me? Does she need me? Am I going to be able to relax and enjoy myself? That wasn't really appealing to me. So actually I preferred to do what I wanted to do. So I used to actually teach Highland dance, and so I'd go there, I'd go to the class, I'd put her in the sling and she'd go to sleep. And that was my me time, that's what I enjoyed doing. You know, I'd still get that time to do something I enjoyed, that time for something for me, but she was still on me, attached to me in a sling. She was completely at peace, she was more than happy, she wasn't worried about being separated from me, and she was asleep. So she knew that I was there if I needed her, but I could relax and do something that was for me. Alternatively, if you do really, really, really need that time to yourself and you feel completely touched out, this is the time where you need your village. So the phrase build your village and it takes a village to raise a child gets thrown around quite a lot, and it's quite an odd saying, but it's so true. And you really need that support from friends and family and your partner and your parents and you know, your loved ones, you really need that support, particularly if you're breastfeeding, because you need to be able to say to somebody, I need you to take my baby for an hour, I need to go for a shower, I need to go and lie down, I need some time and space to myself, please could you just take the baby for an hour. And honestly, you know, I've spoken about this before, Everly was really high needs, high sensitive, didn't sleep, wanted to be with me all the time, fed really, really often, kind of baby, you know, your standard baby. But that doesn't mean I never got any me time. I also found that as soon as we got a bedtime routine, not like a schedule set, you must be asleep by this time, but kind of the routine where I knew what was coming and I could kind of relax, enjoy that routine, because I knew she was going to sleep for the night, and I could have an hour to just have some time for me. Alternatively, some days I couldn't even wait that long, and being able to say to Everly's dad, you need to take her out for an hour because I need space. But yeah, I'd say, you know, that freedom isn't going to be like it was before. It's never going to be like that, regardless of how you feed your child, because you are a parent now. But breastfeeding isn't what's going to stop that freedom. Having a child is, and you just need to have the support around you. And I'd actually recommend to have little and often time to yourself, you know, an hour a day rather than a whole day at the weekend, but like an hour a day where you have no distractions and you have time to just de-stress by yourself. But I'd really recommend doing that rather than, because it's less traumatizing for you to be away from your newborn baby. It's less traumatizing for your baby to be away from you. You're getting that kind of, you know, the phrase, you can't pour from an empty cup. You are getting that. You are refilling your cup every day. You're not waiting till it runs completely dry to then fill it up. You are just topping it up every single day with time to yourself. And I know the idea of having a night off or having, you know, a day away from your child, it just sounds blissful, and I completely get it. I really crave that some days an hour an hour a day just doesn't cut it. And I'm not judging you if you do have a day out or a night out, you know, once a blue moon, whenever you know, if that's how you top up your empty cup, that's fine, but you will get that time back eventually. And time with your child and time with your baby goes so quick, and they grow so quickly. And so just, you know, look after yourself, frequently looking after yourself. Don't let yourself run dry before you top up your cup. You know, find something that makes you want, that is good for you every day. Exercising, napping, going to bed early, sitting in bed and watching Netflix, cooking a meal on your own, going for a dog walk on your own. Just find that designated time every day. Find your village to support you to be able to do that, rather than wait until you run dry. So the next thing kind of goes off what I was just saying, and that's about returning to work. A lot of people assume that if you breastfeed, you know, if you have quite a high demanding job where you work long hours, so for example, if you work 12-hour shifts, or you know, if you work as a doctor or a nurse, or in the police or in the forces or whatever, and you have long hours shift, a lot of people assume that you can't breastfeed. If you do that, you can't breastfeed, because how's your baby meant to go away from you for 12 hours a day? Or if you work on a night shift, how are you meant to breastfeed your baby through the night? And probably the simple answer to that, which isn't actually simple, is expressed breast milk. Obviously, I know a lot of people may struggle with expressing milk, and there is some breastfeeding support out there for that one as well, which I could, again, Breastfeeding Network, and there's really good breastfeeding groups on Facebook for things like that. But if you can, you know, expressing breast milk is an option, returning to work. That's if your baby's young enough to still need frequent foods. I actually did a video, I think it was my last video that I done, was about my experience returning to work with a breastfed baby. She had just turned 1 when I returned to work. I'll link that down below as well, but that is kind of the same thing. But yeah, there is options out there depending on your child's age. Breastfed babies can often go throughout the day when they are on established solid foods. After 6 months, they are actually okay in the day to be just eating food and drinking water, and then they kind of make up for it when you come home and feed a lot when you're home, to kind of make up for the milk that they haven't had during the day. So children do adapt, but I'll link that video down below as well, about our experience returning to work and how I returned to work with a breastfed baby, and we bed share and co-sleep, contact nap and baby wear and everything. So I'll link that down below. And that is actually everything for today's video. Like I said about the kind of disclaimer at the start of the video about, you know, this video is for myth busting purposes only. So yeah, please don't try and take it out of context. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and if you are new, please do like and subscribe, and I'll see you again soon.